a true Renaissance man who made the most of everything that he was given by God to fulfill a most amazing purpose in life. I'm Aganaze Jones, and I'm the privileged niece to have had almost 67 years of a journey, a life's journey, with him as my uncle. So I'd like to give you just my humble thoughts, and I already asked Monsignor and the Holy Spirit to help me, so I will do my best. Anyway, Monsignor was a person that in his ministry, but even in his life, he had a suffering as a child with the loss of his mother, and I'll go into that a little further. So with that suffering, somehow he developed a humor, and he also developed a deep spirituality to where he was a very accessible person. He really got people, and they knew that. People were drawn to him. They knew that no matter what your background was, what your age was, anything about you, you were always welcome. And he would help you transcend. He would help you transcend spiritually. He would also help you with the humor, but he would help you. And he was also very grounded in his humanness on this planet. He loved nature. He loved animals. He loved just God in every form. And that's when I really want to emphasize. So I will give you a little bit of his background and his journey. He was born in Monroeville, Ohio, on St. Francis of Assisi's feast day, which is very appropriate. He was the second of three children, and tragically, they lost their mother, their beautiful mother, when they were 7, 6, and 4, Monsignor being 6. And the story goes that he was walking down a road from the farm that they lived on, and the neighbor saw him and said, "What are you doing, Gilbert?" And he said, "I'm looking for my mother." Well, interesting that that was their theme, lifelong. They wanted to be with her at the end of their lives, so their whole lives were based on a journey of faith to join her. And oddly enough, it took Monsignor almost a decade to do that. Very fascinating. But anyway, at about, I guess, age 12 or 13, he was given the blessing of his vocation. So he enrolled in the Josephine of the Pontifical College in Worthington, Ohio, which he has maintained a very lifelong relationship with. Actually, there were seminarians that came out from there to visit him in New Bethany, when, at the end of his life, a group of them. And I was on the phone with them the other day with the Josephine, sending his obituary, and they referred to him as legendary, and they knew right away who he was. He was someone that if he touched your life, you never forgot it. And that was evidenced to me by all the, when I would go ask him if I could just go through some of his drawers to help, cleaning out. But I saved a lot of the addresses, and he did so. And these were people from all the parishes, and he out-survived a lot of people, but amazing to see who would still stay in touch and visit him and call him. So he went, my first recollection, so when he was ordained, he was sent to the Monterey Fresno diocese at that time. And his first assignment was here, at Our Lady of Guadalupe, but the old church. Isn't it interesting that he has come full circle, and now he's in the new church, if you will. So it's like his kind of symbolic of the resurrection that he's experiencing, which it's very beautiful. But when he was there, and we have some visuals up here, he rode a motorcycle, and So a lot of people thought he was a little bit of a rebel at that time. And, seeing a person in a cleric collar going down the street in a motorcycle, I guess that kind of raises your eyebrows a little or kind of gets your attention. And so that's how he was. Again, he was, I met a man named Tony Castro in the last few years who would go up to visit Monsignor, and Tony remembered him from Bakersfield. He was a teenager, and he told me how Monsignor would play basketball with them, and he would take them to the Kern River and drop them off so he would go minister to the German prisoners during World War II. So again, there's that all age groups. My sister is a Catholic nun, Sister Teresa Jones, and she's a Salesian sister. And her reflections on looking at Monsignor with the youth is that he has, the Salesian spirit. Must be Monsignor. Okay. So she noticed his Salesian spirit because of how he was with youth, which St. John Bosco was very much, everything is youth with St. John Bosco. So anyway, my mother Pauline came out here to be with him. They were very, very deep soulmates, and so that's how I was lucky enough to have this life journey with him. My first memories are Watsonville. I remember that it was a very rough area. I remember hearing car accidents. He was running out constantly. I remember he was being asked to give last rites to stabbings and shootings, and but he did whatever he could for everybody, no matter what time of day he was there. His own life was actually in danger. One time my mother told me he was praying on the altar, and he turned around, there was a man standing over him with a dagger. And of course Monsignor prayed really hard, and even harder, and the guy dropped the dagger and ran out, thank God. But but he was there for everybody, no matter what the circumstances were. Then he went on to, Lindsay, and people would give him their keys to their cabins, and we were fortunate enough that we got to enjoy all of that. That was the type of person he was, that people trusted him so much, and they wanted to do everything for him too, in return. Bishop was one of the places that he was most passionate about, especially because of just the nature that he had access to. And he's going to be buried tomorrow in Bishop, right where the White Mountains and the Sierra Nevadas come close to each other. It's so beautiful, and his headstone is actually quite beautiful. And so he will be laid to rest next to his close friend Monsignor Maloney. But he used to go up into the lakes of the High Sierras, and he'd test the ice, and he would ice skate with people. He would take people from the church parish up there, and they would ice skate. And one time I was visiting with my mother, and my dad was not feeling well, and he gives me this really old pair of skates and he gives me a bunch of socks and says, and then because I hardly learned how to just stand up and go on this, and he says to me as I get on the ice, "Now don't fall." And I'm like, "Thanks a lot," right? So, but he's skating around me like Olympics. he figure eights, backwards, forwards. He was quite amazing, and he would just use every bit of what was given to him to share with others, to bring others to their best always. So then he was, the title of Monsignor was bestowed upon him when he was back. There's a woman who just came up to me right here and remembers him from Our Lady of Perpetual Help. So he was back here in Bakersfield. Then he went over to Mojave and Rosamond. And my parents were delighted because that was near Lancaster. And when he was in Mojave, they used to drive 25 miles each way to go to Mass at 5 o'clock and then have dinner with him. And one day, I just happened to be there, and Monsignor Pointek just happened to be there too. And of course, he was outrageously funny, and it was quite a fun experience that day. Then his retirement. he lived in a little mobile home at the bottom of Olancha Peak, so he got to drink crystal geyser water for free, which was very amazing. But he loved that solitude, and he didn't finish. Even though he was retired, he was taking priest places every time somebody needed a vacation or was sick, he was there. He was all over the place, all over the diocese, even into Nevada. So he always felt the ministry till the very last day. He was asked then by one of the bishops, I don't know if it was Bishop Steinbach, it might have been the one before him, to move into a town. So he did go into Ridgecrest, and then the day came when he needed to, be in the care of others. And that was very hard for him. He was a fiercely independent man. And I remember when he went into New Bethany, he didn't want, if you couldn't take him out of there, he shooed you away. We're like, what happened to Monsignor? Our loving human Monsignor. But he ended up having a hospital stay, and when he came back into the facility, he changed 180 degrees, and he was back to his old self and settled in and was ministering basically till 105 years old. The day came recently when he ended up in a hospital, and evidently contracted COVID in that little local hospital in Los Manos, and couldn't be housed at the facility in Los Manos, so he had to be transferred up to a Turlock. And the day that he went into that, I was lucky enough to get a FaceTime with him, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's my niece." That was the last time I actually had contact with him, and he went right into the hospital and started to pass away, and we were all calling and singing or praying with him or whatever we could, even whether he was responsive or not. And he passed away in peace, even though it was, he had pneumonia. And it was very, of course, very difficult for all of us to know that we were not going to experience his physical body, his voice, just, that presence that radiated God's love to all of us anymore. But of course we know he's already made himself known to a lot of us just in very subtle ways, that he's still with us, and he hasn't really left us, and he never will leave us. So I also wanted to leave you with a couple of funny memories, so just because of his outrageous humor. So whenever he saw a fly, he'd say, leave him alone, that's Elmer. Well, our family never sees a fly and doesn't think of Elmer. So during the vice presidential debates, Elmer landed on top of Vice President Pence's head. And of course I was wondering if Monsignor was watching and what was he thinking. But I thought that was very, very humorous. And then another time we were at China Lake Buffet in Ridgecrest, and the fortune cookies and the bill arrived, and I was just returning to the table, and he looked at my sister, because my sister, the nun, was with us, and he looked at her really intently, and he said, "He who read fortune, pay bill." But that was Monsignor. And so, I just want to say that thank you for listening. There's probably so much more I could say, but I just hope I've touched upon the highlights of him. And I want to say, Monsignor, we are going to miss you terribly, but our greatest consolation is that you are with the grandmother we never got to know, but also the mother that you missed so much. And you're with my mother, your sister now, after the 5 years. She just celebrated her 5-year anniversary. And just God, thank you everybody, and God bless you.